A black single mother with 2 jobs still can't pay rent? You people will never amount to anything. Victor Mancini stands at Clara Anderson's apartment door Tuesday night. She's just home from Mel's diner, grease-stained uniform, holding $2,800 cash, 73 hours of work this week. He snatches the money, counts it, then throws it at her feet. 2 days late, evicted by Monday. 3 hours later, 3:42 a.m., Clara crosses the diner parking lot and hears gasping. A white man in his 50s has collapsed in a motorized wheelchair, clutching his chest. Heart attack. His expensive suit screams wealth. 7 minutes until her bus to the cleaning job. Miss it, fired. The man stops breathing. Clara kneels beside him, her hands finding his chest. 30 compressions, 2 breaths, 30 more. She calls 911 on speaker while pumping life back into a dying stranger. What she doesn't know, he's a billionaire CEO. What she doesn't know, when he wakes up, he'll make one phone call, and that call will change her life forever. The ambulance screams into the night, red lights painting the parking lot like a crime scene. Clara stands there shaking, not from cold, from adrenaline crashing. Her hands are still sticky where she pumped a stranger's chest for 6 minutes straight. A paramedic squeezes her shoulder and tells her she saved his life. Another 2 minutes and he'd be gone. Now they're pulling away, sirens fading, and Clara's alone with her phone buzzing like a hornet's nest. 14 missed calls, 23 texts, all from Quality Clean Services. The last message is final. No call, no show equals immediate termination. Don't bother coming in. Final paycheck mailed. That job paid $16 an hour. 30 hours weekly. $480 between eating and not eating. Between lights on and darkness. Gone because she stayed with a dying man instead of boarding a bus. A young black police officer approaches, tired eyes that have seen this dance before. Clara answers on autopilot. Yes, she found him around 3:42 a.m. No, she doesn't know him. Yes, she performed CPR. No, she doesn't need medical attention herself. The hospital will want to contact her. He's at Johns Hopkins. Stable now, thanks to her. The officer offers her a ride. Clara almost says yes, then remembers Jordan and Sienna home alone, sleeping. 12 and 8. Old enough for an hour, not 5 hours. She'll walk. It's only 3 miles. She's done it before. Twice. Once when the bus broke down. Once when she couldn't afford the fare. By the time Clara reaches her building, the sun's a cold rumor on the horizon. Her feet scream. Her arms ache from CPR. Her phone died 2 miles ago. She climbs 4 flights. The elevator's been broken 3 months, and unlocks the door as quietly as possible. Jordan's awake, sitting on the couch in his 2 small pajamas, trying to look like he wasn't worried. He tells her she's late. She knows. He tells her the other job called. Smart kid didn't answer. She tells him to go back to sleep, but he asks what happened with the tension of someone carrying weight that doesn't fit. Clara pulls him into a hug and tells him the truth. She helped someone who really needed it, but it cost her the cleaning job. Jordan goes stiff in her arms, asking how they'll manage now. She gives him the answer she always gives. The one they're both pretending isn't terrifying. She'll figure it out. She always does. After he's back in bed, Clara stands alone in the kitchen. The eviction notice is still on the fridge, held by a magnet shaped like Sienna's handprint from kindergarten. Final demand, $2,800 due by February 17th, 4 days from now. She opens the fridge. Eggs, half a gallon of milk, bread, peanut butter. Enough for maybe 5 days if she stretches it. The math she's done 1,000 times. Diner job, $12.50 an hour times 35 hours equals $437. 50 weekly. Cleaning job, gone. Rent, $2,800 in 4 days. Electric bill, $156 overdue. Jordan's field trip, $25 he hasn't asked for, but she knows is coming. Sienna's asthma inhaler refill, $40. The math doesn't work. It never works. Clara sits at the kitchen table in the dark and lets herself feel it, the full weight of what she just lost. Not for nothing. She saved a man's life. That matters. That has to matter. But mattering doesn't pay rent. Her phone, charging on the counter, buzzes back to life. One new voicemail. Unknown number. She almost deletes it. Instead, she plays it. A professional voice, crisp and female. Elizabeth Morris, executive assistant to Richard Castellano. The gentleman Clara assisted this morning. He's awake and stable, asking to speak with her. Could she call back to arrange a meeting? They'd like to thank her properly. Clara plays it again. Richard Castellano. She Googles the name with shaking hands. CEO, Castellano Enterprises. Net worth, $4.2 billion. Forbes profile. Business Insider interview. Photo of him at some conference. Sharp suit. Commanding the room from his wheelchair. The man whose chest she pumped in a parking lot is a billionaire. Clara stares at the photo, then at the eviction notice, then back at her phone. 4 days. She saves the voicemail and goes to check on her sleeping children, because that's what she does. That's all she can do. Outside, Baltimore wakes up to another cold morning, indifferent to miracles and mathematics alike. Clara doesn't call back right away. She needs to think. She needs to Google more. She needs to understand what thank you properly means when it comes from someone worth $4 billion. Wednesday morning, Jordan and Sienna eat cereal. The generic kind, the box she bought because it was 87 cents cheaper. Clara watches them and doesn't eat. She's gotten good at skipping meals. Sienna asks why she looks sad. Clara says she's just tired. Jordan, quiet and knowing, mentions she lost the night job. Sienna's spoon stops halfway to her mouth. Clara tells them she had to help someone. It was the right thing to do. They'll be fine. The lie tastes like cardboard cereal. After dropping them at school, walking because the bus pass expired, Clara heads to the diner for her shift. Her co-worker, Tisha, is already there, refilling ketchup bottles. She takes one look at Clara and sees Death walking. Clara admits it was a rough night. Quality Clean called looking for her, sounding angry. Clara tells her she was fired. Tisha stops mid-pour, shocked. Clara explains about the CPR, couldn't leave him. The person's okay, alive, and Clara's unemployed. Tisha calls it messed up karma. Clara ties on her apron. Tips from a Wednesday lunch shift might get her $40 if she's lucky. $40 toward $2,800. The math is cruel. Halfway through her shift, her phone rings. Unknown number. She steps into the kitchen and answers. It's Elizabeth Morris from Castellano Enterprises following up on the voicemail. Would tomorrow at 10 a.m. work? Johns Hopkins Private Pavilion. Tomorrow's Thursday. Clara has a shift. Elizabeth offers to compensate her time. $500 for 1 hour. Clara nearly drops the phone. $500 for 1 hour. She makes $12.50 here. 1 hour there equals 40 hours here. She accepts, her voice barely steady. When the call ends, Clara stands in the kitchen surrounded by frying burgers and old grease, staring at her phone like it's speaking a language she doesn't understand. That evening, Clara's at home helping Sienna with homework when someone pounds on the door. Hard, authoritative. It's Mancini, and he's not alone. There's a younger man with him. Expensive haircut, expensive suit, expensive sneer. The kind of white man who's never heard no in his life. Mancini introduces him as Derek Voss, representing Apex Development Group, the new owners of this building. Voss looks around her small apartment like it's contaminated and delivers the news. All current tenants need to vacate by Saturday, 3 days from now. Clara protests. He said Monday. She has until Monday. Mancini explains the building sale supersedes previous agreements. It's in her lease. Fine print. Clara calls it illegal. Voss suggests she get a lawyer, then smiles coldly and asks if she can afford one. Jordan appears behind Clara. He's heard everything. Clara, with controlled fury, tells them to get out of her home. Mancini corrects her. Technically, it's not her home anymore. She's just occupying it. 3 days or the sheriff removes her. Her choice. After they leave, Clara tells Jordan to pack a bag. Just essentials. Don't let Sienna see. He asks where they're going. She doesn't know yet, but they're not giving these men the satisfaction of watching them beg. She sits on her couch, the one she bought used 7 years ago, where she's read 1,000 bedtime stories, and pulls out her phone. She Googles Apex Development Group. The results make her stomach turn. Shell Company. Connections to Senator Alan Morrison. 52 buildings purchased in low-income neighborhoods across Baltimore in 2 years. Pattern of rapid displacement. Lawsuits, settlements with NDAs. Then she sees it. A quote from Derek Voss in a Baltimore Sun article from 6 months ago. They're not displacing people, they're upgrading communities. If current residents can't afford market rate, that's not their problem. Clara reads it 3 times. Market rate means people like Voss decide who deserves to live somewhere, and people like Clara don't make the cut. She looks at Elizabeth Morris's voicemail again. Tomorrow, 10 a.m., a billionaire wants to thank her. Clara doesn't believe in miracles, but she believes in showing up. She's done it her whole life. 2 jobs, 73-hour weeks, walking 3 miles in the dark because staying meant saving a life. She texts Elizabeth, "I'll be there." Then she goes to her children's room and watches them sleep, memorizing this moment because in 3 days it might all be gone. Outside, Baltimore doesn't care. But tomorrow, someone will. Thursday morning, Clara takes the bus to Johns Hopkins wearing her best outfit, a thrift store blazer over a clean blouse, pants without stains. She still looks like someone who can't afford to be here. The private pavilion doesn't look like a hospital. Marble floors, fresh flowers, a receptionist who says good morning like she means it. Clara gives her name and mentions the meeting with Richard Castellano. The woman smiles, actually smiles, and directs her to the 4th floor, suite 412. Elizabeth Morris meets her at the elevator. 30s, white, professional warmth that might be real. She thanks Clara for coming and mentions that Mr. Castellano's been asking about her every hour. She made quite an impression. Clara downplays it. She just did CPR. Elizabeth insists it was more than that. She leads Clara down a hallway that smells like lavender instead of antiseptic. Suite 412 has a door, not a curtain. Inside, it's more studio apartment than hospital room. Richard Castellano sits in his wheelchair by floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Baltimore. Maybe 55, graying hair, sharp eyes, hospital gown that somehow still looks dignified. IV running to his arm, heart monitors beeping steadily. He's alive because Clara chose to miss a bus. Richard greets her by name, voice stronger than expected. Clara says she's glad he's okay. He tells her he's okay because of her, gesturing for her to sit. The doctors explained it clearly. Without immediate CPR, he'd have brain damage or be dead. 6 minutes without oxygen, the difference between life and vegetable. Clara mentions learning CPR after her father died. Same thing, heart attack. She didn't know what to do then. Something shifts in Richard's face. Understanding. He offers condolences. Clara says it was 13 years ago, but she promised herself she'd never be helpless like that again. Richard acknowledges that Tuesday night she wasn't. They sit in comfortable silence. Then Richard wheels closer and mentions Elizabeth told him Clara lost her job staying with him. Clara stiffens, insisting that's not why she's here. She doesn't want charity. Richard understands, neither does he. He spent 15 years in this chair, proving he doesn't need pity. He taps the wheelchair armrest, explaining his congenital condition. Spent his childhood being underestimated. Built a $4 billion company anyway. Clara admits she read about him. He acknowledges this, then cuts to the point. He doesn't do things halfway. She saved his life. He wants to help her. What does she need? Pride says lie. Say nothing. Walk away. Survival says your children have 3 days before they're homeless. Clara's walls crack. She's being evicted Saturday, $2,800 behind on rent, and the building sold to a development company, forcing everyone out. She can't fight it. Richard pulls out his phone and calls Elizabeth in. When she arrives, he asks for information on the building at 1847 North Patterson Avenue. If they're a Castellano partner, he wants a call today. If not, he wants everything about them by tonight. Elizabeth leaves. Clara's brain struggles to process what just happened. Richard asks permission to make another call on speaker so she hears everything. Clara, barely breathing, agrees. He dials. The voice identifies himself as David. Richard needs him to create a position. Director of Community Impact, $75,000 salary, full benefits, starts Monday. David hesitates, mentioning Richard just had a heart attack. Richard insists. Priorities are very clear right now. The woman who saved his life needs a job. Make it happen. After a pause, David agrees. 90 seconds. Clara's life just changed in 90 seconds. She asks why through her tears. Richard explains, because she chose to be late instead of let him die, because she started CPR even though she was terrified, because she stayed. That tells him everything he needs to know. Clara can't speak. She just nods when he asks her to take the job, to let him fight for her the way she fought for him. Outside the window, Baltimore looks different, like maybe miracles do happen. Elizabeth returns 20 minutes later with a tablet and a grim expression. The building is owned by Apex Development Group, not a Castellano partner, but they have connections, the problematic kind. Richard asks, what kind? Elizabeth hesitates before explaining. Senator Alan Morrison sits on their advisory board. His nephew, Derek Voss, runs operations. Richard's jaw tightens. Morrison. Of course. Clara asks what that means. Richard explains it means political protection, means they think they're untouchable. It means this is going to be harder than he thought. Clara starts to say he doesn't have to do this, but Richard cuts her off. Yes, he does. She gave him his life back. He's not going to watch her lose her home because powerful people think poor people are disposable. He wheels to the window, looking out over the city. He built this company from nothing. Well, not nothing. He had privilege, education, family money to start, but he built it from a wheelchair in a world that sees disability as weakness. He knows what it's like when people look at you and see less than. He knows what it's like to fight systems designed to keep you out. He turns back to her. The difference is, he now has resources to fight back, and he's going to use them. Clara mentions the senator. Richard acknowledges the man has $200 million in biotech regulations pending that Richard has connections to. Power works both ways. Morrison's not the only one with leverage. Elizabeth warns that moving against Morrison will have consequences. Richard accepts this. They'll deal with them. He instructs her to set up a meeting with their legal team. He wants to know every option they have. Elizabeth understands, then turns to Clara. She'll email the employment contract and benefits package tonight. Can Clara start Monday? Clara, still processing everything, confirms she can. Elizabeth arranges corporate housing for Clara and her family while they sort out the Apex situation. Clara's confused about corporate housing. Richard explains they keep apartments for out-of-town executives. One's available. 3 bedrooms, fully furnished, rent-free until she's stable, non-negotiable. Clara protests, it's too much. Richard insists it's not enough. She risked everything for a stranger. The least he can do is make sure she and her kids have a roof. Before Clara can respond, there's a knock. A doctor enters. Older, kind face. He apologizes for interrupting but needs to discuss Richard's discharge plan. Richard introduces Clara as the woman who saved his life. The doctor shakes her hand, complimenting her CPR technique. Textbook execution. Most people panic. She didn't. That's the difference between full recovery and permanent damage. He turns to Richard with the prognosis. 5 days in hospital, then 6 weeks cardiac rehab. No stress, no work. Richard asks him to define work. The doctor refuses to budge. Richard's heart is damaged. Pushed too hard and the next attack kills him. Clara stands to leave, giving him space to rest, but Richard stops her. One more call, he promises. The last one today. He dials speaker on. The voice answers, identifying himself as Commissioner Harris. Richard greets him, asks for a favor. Harris has heard about the heart attack, checks if Richard's okay. Richard credits an incredible woman who did CPR, that's why he's calling. She's being illegally evicted. Building at 1847 North Patterson. Apex Development Group. He needs someone to look into their practices. Harris mentions they've had complaints about Apex, but nothing that's stuck. Richard offers someone willing to go on record, Clara and her neighbors, if Harris is interested. Harris is always interested in predatory landlords. He'll have someone from his office call her. Richard thanks him and hangs up, turning to Clara. 3 days isn't much time, but it's enough to make Apex's life difficult. Police inquiry, building inspector visits, media asking questions. Apex likes working in shadows. Time to turn on some lights. Clara sits back down because her legs won't hold her. She asks who he is. Richard smiles. Someone who was dying alone in a parking lot Tuesday night. Someone who gets a second chance because she cared more about a stranger than her own survival. Someone who's not going to waste that gift. Elizabeth's phone buzzes. She glances at it and frowns. They have a problem. Apex just filed a lawsuit against Clara, claiming she's weaponizing her relationship with Richard to interfere with legitimate business operations, seeking $50,000 in damages. The room goes silent. Clara feels the floor drop out. They're suing her? For what? Elizabeth explains. Defamation, harassment, it's a slap suit, strategic lawsuit to silence her. Make her too scared to fight. Richard's voice turns to steel. When was it filed? Elizabeth checks. 20 minutes ago, right after Commissioner Harris's office called Apex asking questions. Richard understands immediately. Someone tipped them off. Morrison has connections in the police department. Clara stands, shaking. She can't afford a lawsuit. They're going to bury her. Richard refuses to accept this. He tells Elizabeth to get Miranda Santos on the phone immediately, the civil rights attorney. If Apex wants a fight, they'll give them one they'll regret. Clara tries to protest. She can't ask him to do this. Richard corrects her. She's not asking, he's offering. They're suing her because she knows him, because she saved his life. That makes this his fight, too. The doctor warns about Richard's blood pressure. Richard insists he's not stressed, he's focused. He wheels closer to Clara. Listen, he says, they're counting on her being scared, being alone, being too poor to fight back. But she's not alone anymore. And he didn't build a $4 billion company by backing down from bullies. They're going to fight this, and they're going to win. Clara looks at this man, this stranger she saved, this billionaire who's suddenly treating her like she matters, and makes a choice. Okay. Richard accepts this. He instructs Elizabeth to get Miranda, tell her to clear her schedule, and get him every piece of information on Apex Development Group, every property, every complaint, every family they've displaced. If they're doing this, they're doing it right, Elizabeth confirms, already moving. Richard tells Clara to go home, pack what she needs. Corporate housing will be ready tomorrow, and tomorrow they start building a case that ends Apex for good. Clara walks out of that hospital room in a daze. In the elevator, she finally lets herself cry, not from fear, not from despair, from hope. For the first time in 8 years, someone powerful is on her side, and he's not playing around. Friday morning, Clara and her kids move into corporate housing in Harbor East, the kind of neighborhood where she used to clean offices. Now, she has a key. Jordan and Sienna explore like it's Disneyland. Sienna discovers the shower has 3 shower heads and announces this with pure joy. Jordan, quieter and more suspicious, asks how long they can stay here. Clara tells him as long as they need to. She unpacks their clothes. Everything they own fits in 4 suitcases and 6 garbage bags. In this apartment with granite counters and floor-to-ceiling windows, their poverty looks even starker. But they're safe, warm, the fridge works, the heat works. There's no mold, no broken elevator, no Mancini pounding on the door. Clara sits on the real leather couch, probably worth more than her car, and lets herself breathe. Her phone buzzes with an email from HR at Castellano Enterprises. Employment contract, Director of Community Impact, $75,000 annual salary, health insurance with dental and vision included, 401k match, 3 weeks paid time off. She reads it twice to make sure it's real. Monday, she starts Monday. Saturday arrives, the eviction day that doesn't happen. Clara gets a call from the police commissioner's office. Apex Development has been served with a cease and desist. Building inspections found 12 code violations. Evictions are suspended pending investigation. Mancini calls her 3 minutes later, furious. What did she do? Who does she know? Clara tells him she knows someone who believes people deserve dignity, something he wouldn't understand. When Mancini threatens that this isn't over, Clara corrects him. Yes, it is. For him, anyway. She hangs up. First time in her life she's hung up on someone with power over her. It feels incredible. Sunday, Clara takes Jordan and Sienna to the park. They eat ice cream she can actually afford now. Sienna laughs. Jordan almost smiles. He asks if this is real or if it's going to go away. Clara admits she doesn't know, but right now, right here, they're okay. That's enough. But that night, alone in her new bedroom, Clara receives a text from Elizabeth. Apex is escalating. Morrison's office called Richard's board, threatening FDA delays on their biotech division. $200 million at risk. Emergency board meeting Monday. They're pressuring him to back off. Clara stares at the message. Richard is risking everything. For her. The question is, will his company let him? Monday morning, Clara walks into Castellano Enterprises for her first day. The building is glass and steel, 40 stories of power. She's given a badge, an office, a laptop, a team. Her job? Connect company resources to underserved communities. She's good at it. She knows these communities, she's lived them. Her co-worker, James, shows her the ropes, mentioning she's the first community liaison Richard's hired who actually comes from the community. Usually it's Ivy League kids who think poverty is something you fix with a TED Talk. Clara responds that she didn't go to college. She went to the school of 3 jobs and eviction notices. James says that's exactly why she'll be good at this. Clara spends the morning meeting families, hearing stories that sound like her own. Single mothers, disabled veterans, elderly folks on fixed incomes, all facing displacement from Apex properties. By lunch, she's documented 14 cases identical to hers. Apex isn't just targeting her building. It's a pattern, systematic, ruthless. She brings the documentation to Elizabeth, who confirms Miranda needs this for the case. Clara asks how Richard is. She hasn't seen him. Elizabeth hesitates. Board meeting. It's tense. In the boardroom, Richard faces 8 people who are not happy. The CFO reports that Senator Morrison called this morning, threatening to hold up their FDA approvals indefinitely. $200 million in pending revenue gone. All because Richard's fighting a landlord dispute for one employee. A board member named Stevens challenges this. Richard gave Clara a job, a very generous job. He's repaid the debt. Time to walk away. Richard refuses to frame it this way. Walk away from what? From doing what's right. Stevens counters with shareholder value over sentiment. They have fiduciary duties. Richard insists he has a moral duty. Apex is displacing hundreds of families through fraud. They have evidence now, documented patterns. They can't ignore that. Stevens says they absolutely can. It's not their problem. Richard argues it became their problem when Apex sued Clara for knowing him. They're using power to silence her. If he backs down, what message does that send? That they only fight injustice when it's convenient. The CFO reframes. It says they prioritize the company over one person's housing situation. Richard's response is simple. That one person is why he's alive to have this conversation. The room goes quiet. Then Stevens leans forward and suggests Richard is letting gratitude destroy what he's built. Morrison has real leverage. He can kill their biotech division with one committee vote. Richard says they'll fight that too. Stevens asks with what? Richard's one man, Morrison's a senator with 20 years of connections. Richard counters that he's one man with resources and a reason to use them. That's more than most people get. Stevens calls for a vote on whether to continue legal action against Apex Development Group. Richard questions if they're voting on whether to defend an employee from retaliation. Stevens reframes it as voting on whether to risk the company over a non-core issue. Richard tells them to vote. But to know this, if they tell him to abandon Clara Anderson, they're telling him the company he built values money more than people, and he won't lead that company. The vote is 6-3 against continuing the fight. Richard sits in his wheelchair, surrounded by people he's worked with for 15 years, and feels utterly alone. He tells them he abstains from this decision but won't enforce it. Clara's legal defense continues on his personal dime. Stevens protests that's not how boards work. Richard responds, "Then fire me." But they won't, because he's the face of this company and the shareholders love him. They're at an impasse. He's not abandoning her. Meeting adjourned. He wheels out before anyone can respond. Clara's packing up her office at 6 p.m. when Elizabeth finds her. They need to talk. The look on her face says it's bad. In a conference room, Elizabeth delivers the news. The board voted to drop the case against Apex. They're pressuring Richard to back off, but Richard refused. He's continuing Clara's legal defense personally. Then Elizabeth shows Clara a photo on her phone. It's Clara's apartment building, former apartment building. Locks changed, her belongings piled on the curb. Furniture, photos, Jordan's school projects. Clara can barely breathe. When did this happen? This afternoon. Mancini filed an emergency order claiming the unit was abandoned. Sheriff executed it 2 hours ago. Clara protests. They're not evicted, the cease and desist. But Elizabeth explains Apex found a judge who ruled that since Clara moved out voluntarily, the cease and desist doesn't apply. Legal gymnastics, but it worked. Clara stares at the photo. Her daughter's drawings, her son's basketball trophies, their life on the street like trash. Elizabeth apologizes. They're filing an emergency injunction, but Clara knows. It's already gone. Elizabeth confirms neighbors said a truck came, took everything to a storage unit. They're trying to find out which one. Clara sits down, unable to stand. Elizabeth mentions there's something else. Apex leaked the lawsuit to the media. It's going to be on the news tonight. Woman uses billionaire CEO to harass landlords. They're controlling the narrative. Clara understands she's the villain now. Elizabeth says Richard's PR team is drafting a response, but Clara stops her. Just stop. This is too much. Richard's losing his board. His company's at risk. Her stuff is on the street. Now she's going to be on TV as some kind of con artist. She should quit. End this. Let them win. Elizabeth insists Richard won't let her. Clara says it's not his choice. Elizabeth counters that Richard told the board he'd rather lose the company than abandon Clara. He meant it. Clara walks to the window. Baltimore sparkles below, indifferent to her pain. She asks why he's doing this. She's nobody, one person, not worth all this. Elizabeth's answer is clear. Clara's not nobody to him. She gave him his life back, and Richard Castellano doesn't do anything halfway. When he commits completely. Clara's phone rings, unknown number. She almost doesn't answer, but she does. It's Mancini, asking if she's enjoying her fancy corporate apartment, warning it won't last. Castellano will get tired of her. They always do. When he does, she'll have nothing. No home, no job, no dignity. She should have just left quietly. Clara asks if he's done. He tells her this is her last chance. Drop the lawsuit, disappear, or they bury her. Clara's response is simple, then bring a shovel, because she's not going anywhere. She hangs up, Elizabeth staring at her. Clara makes a decision. Set up a meeting with Richard and Miranda Santos. If they're fighting for real. Not just for her. For everyone Apex has done this to. Elizabeth smiles. Now Clara sounds like him. Clara agrees, because she's done being scared. Outside, the sun sets on Baltimore. The city doesn't care about justice or injustice, but the people in it are starting to. Tuesday morning, Clara meets Miranda Santos in a conference room that costs more per hour than Clara used to make in a week. Miranda's 40-something, Latina, sharp suit, sharper eyes. She's built a career destroying predatory corporations. She reviews Clara's case and delivers her assessment. Apex made a mistake suing her. Clara asks how. Miranda explains discovery. They open the door to examine all their practices, every eviction, every building, every tenant. If there's a pattern of discrimination, they can prove it. Richard wheels in, looking tired but determined. He asks what they need. Miranda's answer, testimony from every tenant Apex displaced. They're building a class action with Clara as lead plaintiff. Clara confirms that lead plaintiff means public. Her face on the news, her story in the papers. Is she ready for that? Clara thinks about Mancini throwing her rent check at her, about Voss sneering in her apartment, about Jordan asking if this is real. She says yes. Miranda warns this isn't just fighting Apex. It's fighting Senator Morrison, political connections, money. They're going to come at her hard. Richard acknowledges they already are. They're ready. Miranda challenges this, looking directly at Richard. His board wants him to back off. His company's at risk. Why is he still here? Richard's answer is straightforward. When he was dying in a parking lot, Clara chose his life over her survival. He doesn't forget debts like that. Miranda clarifies this isn't about debt anymore. This is about changing a system. Richard accepts this. Then they'll change it. The next 48 hours blur together. Miranda's team interviews 14 families. Same story, different addresses. Fraudulent charges, sudden evictions, buildings sold to luxury developers. Clara works with her new team at Castellano Enterprises, connecting families to legal resources, documenting everything that might help the case. Wednesday afternoon, Richard makes a call with Clara, listening. He contacts Senator Helen Burke, Morrison's political rival, and proposes something interesting. He tells Burke about Apex Development Group, run by Morrison's nephew, systematically displacing over 300 families in Baltimore. Racial targeting, fraudulent charges, political protection. He has documentation, testimony, evidence. Burke asks why he's telling her this. Richard explains Morrison's been blocking her housing reform bill for 2 years. This gives her ammunition, public hearings, media attention, justice for vulnerable families, and it happens to destroy her political rival. Burke notes he's asking her to use his case for political gain. Richard reframes. He's offering her a chance to do the right thing that also happens to be politically advantageous. Win-win. After a pause, Burke asks him to send everything he has. If it's as bad as he says, she'll call for a Senate inquiry. Richard promises it's worse. He hangs up and looks at Clara. Politics is a game, but sometimes the game can be played for good. Clara questions if he's using her as a political weapon. Richard distinguishes this as using her story to expose corruption. There's a difference. Clara asks if there really is. Richard insists yes, because when they're done, it's not just her who benefits. It's everyone Apex has hurt. Everyone they would have hurt. That's not using her. That's amplifying her. Clara considers this carefully. her face going public, becoming a symbol instead of a person. She agrees, but with conditions. She wants to control her own story. No spin, no PR polish. The truth. Richard accepts immediately. Thursday, Clara does her first interview. Local news, live. The reporter asks the obvious question. She saved billionaire Richard Castellano's life. Now he's fighting a legal battle for her. Some say she's taking advantage of his gratitude. Clara's response is direct. Some people also said she should have let him die so she could catch her bus. She didn't save Richard Castellano because she wanted something. She saved him because watching someone die when you can help isn't something she can live with. The reporter presses about the high-paying job and corporate housing. Clara explains she has a job because she's qualified. She has housing because a company provided it while she's being illegally targeted. And she has a lawsuit because Apex Development Group thinks poor black women don't fight back. They're wrong. When asked what she wants people to know, Clara delivers her message clearly. This isn't about her and Richard. This is about a system that lets powerful people destroy families for profit. Apex has displaced over 300 families, hundreds of children without homes, elderly people on the streets. That's not business, that's cruelty, and it has to stop. The interview goes viral. By Friday morning, #Justice for Clara is trending. Senator Burke announces a Senate inquiry into predatory housing practices. The FBI opens an investigation into Apex Development Group. And Derek Voss calls Richard Castellano desperate. Richard's answer is simple. Justice. Voss can give it voluntarily, or the courts will take it. When Voss protests about destroying his business over one tenant, Richard corrects him. Voss destroyed his business by thinking human beings were obstacles. Richard's just making sure everyone sees it. The war is on, and this time the people with power are on the right side. The press conference is scheduled for Monday morning, 2 weeks after Clara saved Richard's life. Castellano Enterprises' main lobby, cameras everywhere. Clara stands beside Richard, Miranda on her other side. Behind them, 14 families, all black or Latino, all displaced by Apex. Richard speaks first, recounting the night 2 weeks ago when he had a massive heart attack in a parking lot at 3:42 in the morning, alone, dying. And a woman he'd never met chose to save his life instead of catching her bus to work. That woman, Clara Anderson, lost her job that night, then her home, then was sued for $50,000 by the company that evicted her. Why? Because she knew him. Because saving his life gave her a connection to power, and Apex Development Group wanted to punish her for it. The cameras flash continuously. Reporters scribble notes. But here's what Apex didn't count on. Richard continues. He doesn't forget debts. And when he started looking into why Clara was being evicted, he found something bigger. A pattern of systematic displacement targeting low-income families across Baltimore. Fraudulent charges, illegal evictions, political protection from Senator Alan Morrison, whose nephew runs Apex. He pauses, letting this information settle over the room. Then he announces the Castellano Justice Fund, $50 million committed to fighting predatory housing practices nationwide, starting with Apex Development Group. They have documentation of 312 fraudulent evictions. They have testimony, they have evidence, and they're not backing down. The room erupts with questions shouted from every direction. Richard gestures to Clara. She steps to the microphone, hands shaking but voice steady. She introduces herself. Clara Anderson, a black single mother who worked 73 hours a week and still couldn't afford rent. She saved a man's life because it was the right thing to do and was punished for it. But she's not special. She's one of hundreds. Behind her are families who lost everything because people like Derek Voss think poverty means you don't deserve dignity. She looks directly at the cameras, delivering her core message. This has to stop, not just for her. For every family living one emergency away from homelessness, for every person working 3 jobs and still falling behind, they deserve better. And today they're fighting for it. The applause is deafening. By Tuesday, Senator Morrison is on CNN, visibly uncomfortable. When asked about his nephew's company being under federal investigation, he claims no knowledge of any improper practices. Derek runs his business independently. The reporter presses, but Morrison sits on Apex's advisory board. Morrison insists it's in name only. He's not involved in day-to-day operations. The reporter mentions records showing Morrison blocked housing reform bills that would have prevented exactly these practices. Morrison calls this a mischaracterization, but he's drowning. Live on television. Senator Burke calls for formal Senate hearings. Wednesday brings another board vote at Castellano Enterprises. This time it's 6-3 in Richard's favor. Stevens admits the public response has been overwhelming. Continuing the fight is good for the brand. Richard doesn't smile. It was always good for the brand, he notes. It was also the right thing to do. He's glad they finally see that. Thursday delivers the first legal victory. Federal court dismisses Apex's lawsuit against Clara. Not just dismisses it, but sanctions them for filing a frivolous slap suit. The judge's ruling is clear. This lawsuit was filed in bad faith to intimidate Clara. Apex Development Group is ordered to pay her legal fees plus $25,000 in damages. Furthermore, the judge is referring this case to the state bar for potential ethics violations. Clara sits in the courtroom with Miranda beside her, feeling something she hasn't felt in years: vindication. Mancini's in the back row. When the judge rules, he stands and storms out. Clara catches his eye as he passes and delivers a quiet line about picking that up on his way out. He doesn't respond. They both know she won. Friday brings settlement negotiations. Derek Voss, his lawyers, Senator Morrison trying to distance himself, versus Miranda Santos, Richard's legal team, and the weight of public opinion. Miranda lays out exactly what's happening. Apex will cancel all pending evictions across 52 buildings. They'll refund $4.3 million in fraudulent charges. They'll sell the buildings to a community land trust at fair market value, which Castellano Enterprises will finance, and Derek Voss will be permanently barred from property management in Maryland. Voss calls this insane. They're asking him to destroy his business. Miranda corrects him. He destroyed his business. They're just making sure he can't do it again. Voss threatens to fight this in court for years. Richard responds simply, "Go ahead. They have $50 million and unlimited time. Voss has an uncle about to lose his Senate seat and FBI agents examining his tax returns. How long does Voss think he'll last?" Silence fills the negotiation room. Voss's lawyer asks for time to consider. Miranda gives them until Monday. After that, they go to trial and make sure every family Voss displaced testifies publicly, on camera. Their choice. Monday morning, Apex settles on every term Miranda demanded. Public record. No NDAs. The news breaks at noon. Apex Development Group settles historic housing discrimination case. 312 families to receive restitution. Derek Voss banned from property management. Clara reads it on her phone during lunch break. She's been at Castellano Enterprises for 3 weeks now. It feels like a lifetime. Elizabeth finds her in her office. Richard wants to see her, top floor. Clara takes the elevator up to Richard's office, all windows overlooking Baltimore. He's at his desk, reading the settlement terms, and looks up when she enters. They won. Clara credits him with the victory. She just told her story. Richard insists her story changed 312 lives. That's not just anything. He wheels around the desk and hands her an envelope. Inside, deed paperwork. Clara asks what this is. Richard explains he bought her building from the Community Land Trust. He's deeding it to a tenant cooperative, and she'll chair the board. Clara starts to protest, but Richard stops her. She already did the hard part. She saved his life, fought a billion-dollar company, changed housing policy in Maryland. This is just making sure she has a home while she keeps changing the world. Clara can't speak through her tears. Richard continues. The Castellano Justice Fund is expanding to 12 cities. They're calling the model the Clara Protocol. Her name, her legacy. She asks why again, needing to understand. Richard's answer is complete, because that night in the parking lot, she taught him something he'd forgotten. Power unused is power wasted. Gratitude unexpressed is debt unpaid. She gave him his life back. This is him using that life for something that matters. They sit in comfortable silence. Two people who saved each other, looking out over a city that's a little more just than it was 3 weeks ago. Epilogue. Text overlays the image. The Castellano Justice Fund has protected 4,000 families across 12 cities. Derek Voss is serving 2 years for fraud. Victor Mancini, 18 months. Senator Alan Morrison lost his re-election bid and is under federal investigation. Clara Anderson is now Chief Impact Officer of Castellano Enterprises. Richard Castellano's heart is strong. So is his commitment to justice. Sometimes, saving one life saves thousands. 6 months later, Clara stands in the community center that used to be Mel's diner. The parking lot where she found Richard, where everything changed, is now a garden, vegetables growing where she once knelt on frozen asphalt, pumping a stranger's chest. Jordan and Sienna are inside, helping serve lunch to families from the building, their building, the one they'll never lose again. Richard wheels up beside her. He's healthy now, strong. The heart attack is a memory, not a threat. He asks if she's ready for tomorrow. Clara admits she's terrified about speaking at a congressional hearing about housing reform. Richard assures her she'll be brilliant. She always is. Clara counters that he's the one who built a $4 billion empire. Richard distinguishes between building a company and building a movement. She built a movement. They watch the garden together. Tomatoes, peppers, herbs, life growing from concrete. Clara reflects on how weird it is. She used to walk past here every day thinking about how tired she was, how much she hurt, how impossible everything felt. Richard asks what she thinks now. Now she walks past and remembers the night she chose to stay, the night she thought she was losing everything. She smiles. Turns out she was finding it. Richard asks if she ever regrets it, all the attention, the pressure, the media. Clara says never, then turns the question back. Does he regret backing her when his board said no? Never. Richard confirms. A comfortable silence settles between them. Then Clara thanks him for everything. Richard thanks her for staying. Inside, Jordan's teaching a younger kid chess. Sienna's reading to elderly neighbors. Clara's children thriving in a world that almost crushed them. Richard mentions he has to get to a meeting. Dinner Friday? Clara confirms she wouldn't miss it. After he wheels away, Clara stands alone in the garden, feeling the sun on her face. Her phone buzzes with a text from Tisha, her old co-worker from the diner, saying she saw Clara on the news again and she's so proud. Clara smiles and texts back that she's just doing what's right, like someone once taught her. She walks to the exact spot, the handicapped parking space where a man was dying and she had a choice. She remembers. 7 minutes to the bus, a stranger's blue lips, her father's last breath, the decision that cost everything and gave everything. She whispers to the wind that she'd do it again, every time. Behind her, children laugh, families gather, a community heals. Baltimore doesn't look different. The buildings are the same, the streets are the same, but the people are free, and that changes everything. 1 year later, Clara speaks at the Castellano Justice Fund Gala. Richard introduces her to a room full of donors, activists, and families they've helped. A year ago, he says, this woman had every reason to keep walking. She didn't. And because of that choice, 4,000 families have homes tonight. Because she stayed, a system changed. Because she fought, justice won. Clara steps to the podium and looks out at the crowd. She didn't save Richard because she thought he'd change her life, she explains. She saved him because walking past someone dying isn't who she is. But here's what she learned. Kindness isn't weakness. Gratitude isn't charity. And power that protects people is the only power worth having. She pauses, finding Richard in the audience. Someone once told her that power unused is power wasted, that gratitude unexpressed is debt unpaid. So if you have power, use it. If someone shows you kindness, return it. If you see injustice, fight it. That's how we change the world, one choice at a time. The applause builds. Clara sees faces in the crowd, families she's helped, children in homes, elderly people safe. She closes with a question. Every act of compassion creates ripples. What will yours be? Freeze frame. Clara and Richard side by side, two people who saved each other. Final text appears. If this story moved you, share it. Every good deed matters. Every person deserves dignity. Every choice counts. Hit that like button if you believe good people deserve good things. Subscribe for more stories of justice and hope. And comment below, what would you have done in that parking lot? Because the world needs more people who choose to stay.